And welcome in everybody to another episode of Mock Draft Mondays here on the High Low Sports Podcast. We appreciate y'all for tuning in with us. We are now on the first Monday of April. It is draft month, and this is no April Fools. We got ourselves a very unique draft coming up today. Lots of trades, 2 rounds yet again. So we're gonna have a little bit of wheeling and dealing, as you saw from the title. You probably have an idea of what the first 4 picks are going to be, but they might just change. They might just be a little bit of a surprise. So we're going to go ahead and get right on board with it. No surprise out of the gate. Caleb Williams to the Bears is as good as done. Whatever the odds are, they could be minus 10 million. I would still take those odds. I'd still bet the house on it. So I'm saying Caleb Williams to Chicago. This is where it's going to get a little bit of fun. Where there's a little bit of smoke, there could be a little bit of fire. And there are rumors of the Commanders being very interested in one J.J. McCarthy. And for this week, for the sake of fun, we're going to roll with it. The tremendous skyrocketing draft stock continues. And J.J. McCarthy from potential first-round pick fringed all the way up to pick number 2. Commanders will find their new face of the franchise, so they believe, with J.J. McCarthy. With it, pick number 3, this is going to leave New England with a surprising choice that I don't think they were quite ready for. So I think with this one, they're going to go with Jaden Daniels. I think Daniels is the QB they're looking at. I think that's the one they'd want to take. The rumors of them wanting to trade out, I think, is if he is not there or if Caleb isn't there for some weird reason. But since Daniels is here, I think they are going to go ahead and take Daniels. Take us now to pick number 4, and Arizona, now with Drake May sitting there, I think this makes it a lot more interesting. Arizona's a lot more tempted to trade out, so we're going to say they do trade out of it. I think they're going to be enthralled by the idea of Minnesota not only giving up both ones, but I think they'll even give up a 1 next year and then just throw in like maybe an Arizona 5 or something like that. Like just what a point is, it's going to be an absolute haul for Drake May to Minnesota, and I think the Cardinals will gladly take that to load up on picks to build around Kyler Murray. And as you can see, 4 for 4 out of the gate, 4 picks, 4 quarterbacks, Caleb, JJ, Jaden Daniels, Drake May in that order, which means the draft officially starts here at pick number 5 with the Los Angeles Chargers, who I think are all on board for trading this pick. And I do think if they do stick and pick, they are all in on either like a Joe Alt, a Talisi Fuaga, an offensive lineman. However, with Marvin Harrison Jr. sitting there staring you right in the face, I think Harbaugh's going to have a tough time turning that down. So I think he will pull the trigger on the top-rated receiver in the draft and bring in Marvin Harrison Jr. to catch bombs from Justin Herbert. Take us now to pick number 6, the New York Giants. Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, doesn't matter who's playing quarterback. They need weapons, so we're going to give them Malik Neighbors, the top, who some people have as receiver number 1 on the board. Explosive, put him in the slot, and he's toasting people. It gets down the field, yards after catch, does a lot of things incredibly well. Malik Neighbors to the New York Giants. Pick number 7, the Tennessee Titans. I do like the idea of Rome Odunze, but I do think bringing in Calvin Ridley, I think this is more of if Harrison or Neighbor slips is where they pull the trigger there. But I do think they're going to go and take Joe Alt. I think Peter Skoronski, they want to build that offensive line around Will Levis and Tony Pollard, and Joe Alt gives you a franchise left tackle, especially in that division now that features Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson with Josh Allen, and those type of guys as well. So we're going to go and take Joe Alt to the Tennessee Titans. Number 8, Atlanta Falcons. I think this is a good spot for Odunze, but they've put a lot of capital into receivers too. I mean, you already have Drake London. You brought in Rondale Moore. You brought in Darnell Mooney. I don't think receiver is as big of a thing, especially Odunze, who's kind of a jump ball, big-bodied receiver. Similar to what they have with Drake London, I think Odunze is a lot cleaner, a lot smoother, but you also have Kyle Pitts, big bodies. I think here they're going to look to their defense side of the ball. They need to get somebody that can hit the quarterback. They have not had that in Vic Beasley almost a decade ago that's had double-digit sacks. I don't know the exact numbers, but they need someone to get sacks. Arnold Ebiketie, they've had some Lorenzo Carter, I think is who it is. They just haven't – nothing's quite clicked. So we're going to give them Dallas Turner here. They're going to take the first defensive player off the board. Pick number 9, we have the Chicago Bears. Rome Odunze would be a lot of fun here. I do think something tells me they're going to try and split offense and defense. They do want to create a very balanced team, and Matt Eberflus is still the head coach. He's going to get his way, I think, with this pick, and they're going to go ahead and get Jared Verse to play opposite of Montez Sweat. They get an offensive leader in Caleb and a defensive leader in Jared Verse here to go with that deep. Verse, Sweat, Jalen Johnson, Edmonds, they got themselves a defensive squad there in Chicago. Surprise, you've heard that one before, but we send Jared Verse to the Bears. Pick number 10, the New York Football Jets. I think in this case, someone like Brock Bowers and Rome Odunze are very much in play. I think Mike Williams bringing in gives them a little bit of flexibility there. And knowing what they say about Robert Saleh, he's probably looking at defense and probably wants to grab a defensive player. But I'm going to say they're going to stick with the plan and go Talisi Fuaga, mauling offensive lineman. You could start him at guard opposite Elijah Vera Tucker. Someone goes down, which is likely. You have two older tackles. Pop him out there. Whatever you need to do, a very versatile mauling offensive lineman. Basically, Breece Hall followed that guy. So we're going to say they take Talisi Fuaga. Pick number 11, Arizona Cardinals. They probably can't believe this, but they have a receiver they probably would have considered in the top 5 or 6 picks, and Roma Dunze hanging out there. So I'm going to say they take Roma Dunze to give Kyler Murray a big-bodied weapon down the field. Pick number 12 in the Denver Broncos, and you know what? We're going to have ourselves another trade here. So we're going to go to Denver, but I think misses out on that run of quarterbacks, but doesn't want to reach for one here. This is where it's going to get a little fun. Arizona's going to take a page out of the Texans playbook from last year. They're going to be willing to trade up. They have some extra picks. Denver needs picks, clearly. I think they'll be willing to give up a couple of 3s to go with it, maybe 90, 66, and then they'll throw in a 5, something like that to make it work. But Denver's willing to go back just to get a few more picks. You know what? We're even going to take 5 out. We're just going to make it. They're going to go straight back. Arizona's going to come flying up the board because I think they're going to then go with Quinyon Mitchell. They're going to get the best receiver on the board and, in my opinion, the best corner in the draft. And if not only the best corner in the draft, but arguably a top 2 or 3 defensive player in the draft. So Jonathan Gannon's going to get a weapon for Kyler and somebody on his defense to help build around us. We know Jonathan Gannon from his time in Philadelphia. He loves the secondary. You got Budda Baker there. I think Quinyon Mitchell is a great fit here. So they come flying up the board to get a little bit of a double dip without having to give up too much thanks to those extra picks they got from the trade. Now at pick number 13, we got the Las Vegas Raiders. I think right now Terrion Arnold and Olu Fashanu are both in play. I think they're really trying to build a defensive squad there. I mean, we saw them bring in Christian Wilkins the way they started bringing in players. I think bringing in a corner like Terrion Arnold to hold up in the back end, let Max Crosby, let Wilkins get a little extra time to tee off on quarterbacks. They probably know Connell and Gardner Minshew. They're not going to outscore the Justin Herberts and the Patrick Mahomes of the world, but I think they feel like they can we saw what they did last year when they played the Chiefs. Their defense put them in hell, and they scored just enough, and I think Terrion Arnold is a good fit to complement that. Now we have the New Orleans Saints at pick 14. I've usually been giving them a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman here, but I do think Mike Thomas looks like he's going to be on the way out. You do have Chris Olave. Rashid Shaheed, I believe, is out too. So I'm going to give them Brian Thomas Jr. They're going to keep the Louisiana kid in Louisiana. They were kind of married to Derek Carr for a while now with the contract they gave him. Sure, they could probably find a way out of it, but there's no one here for them to draft at quarterback. So I'm going to give them Brian Thomas Jr., an elite weapon to go along with Chris Olave. Just give Derek Carr all the weapons they can to try and maximize their time with him. Number 15, we have the Indianapolis Colts. I think these last 3 picks are the 3 top guys they would want at this point. I think if they could, they would trade out here, but they also are going to see Brock Bowers sitting there on the board. And while it's not a big position of need, that is a big-time weapon for your young quarterback in Anthony Richardson. You do have a bunch of tight ends on the roster, but Brock Bowers is just different. The way he could take over the middle of the field, give Michael Pittman, who you just paid some more opportunities from that Z spot. I think the receiver draft is deep enough. They could probably pick someone up later to fill in. Josh Downs out of the slot. I think Brock Bowers is the pick to go here, who is an underratedly decent inline blocker, so he helps in the run game as well. The block and slip checkdowns and things he could provide in. It just makes a lot of sense. So Brock Bowers slips to this point. I think the Colts will go ahead and pull the trigger. Next, we got the Seattle Seahawks at pick number 16. I have given them Latu a lot, and I still like it a lot, no pun intended. I think his ability to get after the quarterback on the edge is something Seattle desperately needs. So we are going to get them Latu, just somebody to go get after Brock Purdy, get after Kyler Murray, get after Matthew Stafford. They do have good players in the secondary, especially at corner. Not as much at safety now. Safety is a little bit more shaky after getting rid of Quandre Diggs, but linebackers, they're solid. We're going to go with Latu to go and get after the passer. 17, Jacksonville Jaguars. The receiver is definitely in play here, but I'm looking at Olu Fashanu. They do need to shore up the offensive line a bit. I like the corners. I think they were going to look at this division and realize we need some athletes. We need some versatile players that can, for lack of better terms, take care of some of the other weapons. Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, and now Brock Bowers. CJ Stroud with Nico Collins and Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz. I'm going to go ahead and give them Nate Wiggins here. Outside corner, they could put out there him and Tyson Campbell, absolute athletes on the edge. Give Josh Allen and those linebackers and Devin Lloyd and Foy Louis-Con time to basically wreak havoc up front. Next, we got the Cincinnati Bengals at 18. This is tough because you have Olu Fashanu and J.C. Latham and Byron Murphy. They're all picks that make a lot of sense. I'm going to give them Olu Fashanu. I think him sliding is a little unfair here, and there's a he's a top 10 caliber player. Just the way this board played out, he slipped just a little bit. So they're going to get a high quality player. I think they're going to look at someone like Xavier Worthy or if Brian Thomas was here and try not to get left up to their own devices. But I think the greater heads will prevail, and they will add another offensive lineman here because I know they have both Browns at tackle, but they really, really need to continue to fortify the offensive line. So we're going to give them Olu Fashanu here. I mean, you could kick him inside for now too. Like, he's a very versatile piece. For the Rams, I've usually been giving them a Cooper DeJean or so, but I think now with the retirement of Aaron Donald, Byron Murphy, who I'm not saying is Aaron Donald, is a very similar profile, like height, weight, speed, play style-ish. If he's not even saying he's 80% of Aaron Donald, so please don't come after me with pitchforks, but he fills a need and is a highly ranked player, and it just makes sense. Pick number 20, Pittsburgh Steelers. You brought in Russell Wilson, you brought in Justin Fields. George Pickens is there. You did trade Deontay Johnson, leaving a hole at receiver, so they could go after someone like A.D. Mitchell or possibly Xavier Worthy. We know how much they love to spend on defense, the highest paid defense in the league. But I'm going to say that cooler heads will prevail, and they will continue to build that offensive line. You got Broderick Jones last year. This year, you bring in J.C. Latham. Big, athletic, strong right tackle. So now you have your tackles for your two quarterbacks. Miami at pick 21. Same song and dance. You need offensive linemen. You need to help that situation especially if you're going to have to pay Tua. However, your defense is getting absolutely ripped apart because you can't pay everybody. You just lost Christian Wilkins to the Raiders. Johnny Newton's a very, very good interior defensive lineman who could fill that type of role as somebody who could get after the passer up the gut as well as cause havoc in the run game. So we're going to say they should go offensive line. There are some good options here, but Johnny Newton is a great fit there as well. So I'm going to say they're going to lean towards the defensive end and take Johnny Newton. Philadelphia pick 22. I like Kool-Aid McKinstry. That's been the pick here a lot, but Cooper DeJean also makes a lot of sense there. You brought in C.J. Gardner-Johnson to play safety. You also have Isaiah Rodgers coming off the suspension. I do think bringing in Saquon Barkley, Cooper DeJean gives you a versatile safety / corner, someone you can move around. So if you lose James Bradbury gets injured or Darius Slay gets banged up, you could plug him in at outside corner. You need him to play nickel, you could play nickel. If you need to move CJ to nickel, you could put Cooper at safety. So Cooper DeJean makes a lot of sense and plugs a lot of holes for the Eagles. Pick 23, the Denver Broncos, after the trade back and getting some extra picks. I think they will go ahead and take a quarterback here, but I'm not going to go with Bo Nix this time. I'm going to lean with Michael Penix Jr. I think these two are very, very close. I think Bo Nix, he's the popular pick for Denver, and that he's kind of, people have called him a point guard. He's just a distributor, read, react, get the ball out where the coach tells him he needs to go. I think Michael Penix's pro day and what we've seen since they stopped playing, the arm strength, the ability to just threaten every blade of grass, and that 4.5 40 that he's still able to run. I know we don't see it very often, but when he can get in a straight line, he can scoot. We just don't want him getting touched. We want him to slide or get out of bounds. But I do think Sean Payton's going to look at that like, okay, he can make some plays. There is some stuff to be ironed out. That offense that they ran in Washington's not going to carry over perfectly. Like, they're not going to be able to run it the same. But I'm going to give him Michael Penix Jr. to play quarterback in Denver. They need one regardless, and it's Michael. I think 6 and 1 and half does the other. I think Michael Penix just is a naturally better thrower of the ball, a little more gifted. Dallas at pick number 24. Offensive line is the move, and they have their choice of the litter here. I think Troy Fautanu, tackle, who I think is going to be more of a guard at the next level, similar to Elijah Vera Tucker a few years ago, but can play on the outside. They need both, really. So we're going to give them Troy Fautanu, versatile offensive lineman. They can play outside, inside. Jackson Powers Johnson is very much on the board, but I think they were expecting one of these two to be gone between Mims or Fautanu, but I'm going to give them Fautanu for now. Green Bay Packers at pick number 25. I like Kool-Aid McKinstry there. He looks very, very similar in a way to Yair Alexander as far as like the size, the speed, the athleticism. So I'm going to go with Kool-Aid McKinstry. They do need a corner. They do need help in the secondary, so we're going to go with Kool-Aid to Green Bay. Now we got Tampa Bay at pick number 26. This is a interesting one. I think interior offensive line is on the board. Linebackers very much on the board. Chop Robinson is a suggestion here, but we're going to go ahead and stick with interior offensive line because they can't run the ball. They've not been able to run the ball for like 3 or 4 years now. I think part of that is interior offensive line blocking they're not the best run blockers. They hold up well in pass protection, which is what you needed when you brought in Tom Brady. That's why you have him. But I think now you pay Baker Mayfield, you brought back Mike Evans. This is where I see Jackson Powers Johnson making a fantastic fit. Someone who can help get Rachaad White some holes to run through so they can run more of that play action game, stuff that Baker is very good at that he didn't have a chance to run as much last year. I think that helps take their offense to the next level. So JPJ going to TB. Now I have Arizona for the third time already. You're going to get real tired of hearing about Arizona, but everything is on the board right now. Offensive line is a need. Graham Barton. I think if JPJ was there, they would pull the trigger there. They do need some help getting after the passer. And I think since you have all of these picks, Chop Robinson was wreaking havoc in spurts this season. We saw it, especially in that Michigan game. There's a reason. I've heard Joel Klatt say a lot. They ran the ball 32 times because, in part because they could not block Chop Robinson. He was going to get whatever he wanted all day. And I think that kind of talent, his athleticism, it feels like a Dafwe Owe a couple of years ago too. Just get him in positions where he can sprint at the quarterback. And I think they'll, with their third first-round pick, they're willing to take that move, especially because they have an early second-round pick coming up too. So Chop Robinson to the Cardinals. Pick number 28, I'm surprised he's still here. I think the run just hasn't quite started. I think this is about where we see the run start as well of receivers. It doesn't start with the Bills taking A.D. Mitchell. The ability to get down. He has 5 touchdowns in the college football playoffs in his career. That's incredible, and that's something they need is someone who can just win one-on-one. You have Stephon Diggs. Khalil Shakir looks like a great underneath, almost slot type of player that he's developing into. You have the 2 tight ends. A.D. Mitchell feels like he will fill that Gabe Davis role very nicely. They need defense, but I think another skill position, especially if the rumors of Stephon Diggs on the way out. I don't know if that's true. We'll find out. But for now, we're going to go and put A.D. Mitchell with the Bills because either way, it makes a lot of sense to pair him with Josh Allen. Detroit at pick number 29. Defense is the move. We're going to go to corners. I like Ennis Rackstraw Jr. a lot, but I think they're going to go with Kamari Lassiter. I think he kind of fits a little bit of the mold of. I like both of them a lot, and I think they will as well. I think they're going to go with the quote-unquote bigger school guy from Georgia in this situation. I think both of them are really, really good, though. 6 in one hand, half a dozen the other. And it almost feels sacrilegious not to have a Georgia defender off the board already, considering the last few years. So we're going to put Kamari Lassiter here. Pick number 30, we have the Baltimore Ravens. Offensive line is a big need here for them as well. Receiver, we see Xavier Worthy. Trust me, that is very tempting. I think they need some edge help as well. You have Zay Flowers. You have Rashad Bateman. Ooh, this is tough. I'm going to take Amarius Mims because they traded Morgan Moses, and Ronnie Stanley is injured every other week. It feels like hopefully he can stay healthy, but they got to keep Lamar upright and healthy. And Amarius Mims, especially in that run game, makes a lot of sense. So we're going to take the big mauler out of Georgia, Amarius Mims. San Francisco at pick 31. They need offensive line badly. They have gotten away with basically having Trent Williams and a really good scheme. I think they're starting to see now. They need to start building around. Graham Barton is a really good pick here. I'm going to go with Tyler Guyton as someone they can start at right tackle and kick over to left tackle after Trent Williams retires. Basically, like give him some time to learn the position, get his sea legs under him in the NFL, then have him replace him. So we're going to go with Tyler Guyton to the 49ers. Pick number 32, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, and everyone's worst fear is the idea of Xavier Worthy and his combine record-breaking 40-yard dash speed going there. But I think with the signing of Hollywood Brown, I don't think they're going to go with that direction. And considering what we see with Rashee Rice, I don't know what that's going to lead to. But what it looks like on paper is who knows if he's going to be missing some games. I'm going to give them Ladd McConkey. His athletic profile is similar to Chris Olave's, even though it doesn't look like it. Runs quick routes, gets open, underratedly athletic, and that's not just because he's white. He runs behind people a lot more than you'd think, and he's really good with the ball in his hands. So Ladd McConkey to Kansas City. That's going to end round number 1 and take us into round number 2, pick number 33. Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young needs some targets. They spent a lot of money on the guards this offseason. They brought in some offensive linemen. They brought in Deontay Johnson. Keon Coleman makes a lot of sense, the big body target, but they do have Jonathan Mingo for that. They do have Deontay Johnson, the guy who can win one-on-one with those underneath routes. Xavier Worthy just looks like a whole lot of fun here. You throw him a screen and watch him run. Let Bryce Young play action and just let it fly. He doesn't have a big stature, and I think people forget he does have a really good arm to go, though, so he can let it fly if they pack the box against him. So we're going to bring Xavier Worthy to stretch out the defense and hopefully give Bryson Young a chance in his second year because Carolina did him no favors in year 1. So Xavier Worthy goes to Carolina, and we're going to say Bryce Young gets a very fun new weapon. And now at pick number 34, we have the New England Patriots. Jane Daniels in the first round. They got to protect him. They don't have Trent Brown. That offensive line is rough, is what we're going to say, just to say the least. I like this Jordan Morgan that they're highlighting here. I also like them going defense. But defensively, when they're healthy, they have been just fine the last couple of years. Offensively, they can't get anything going. I do like Jordan Morgan here a lot, but I'm good. It's between him and Graham Barton. I'm going to go with Graham Barton, actually. I think they're going to try and build interior a little bit, running the ball and then play action off it. They can help the tackles with tight ends, that sort of thing. So we're going to go with Graham Barton. I talked myself out of Jordan Morgan, and I really do kind of want to – he would make a lot of sense here in Arizona, to the point of I think we're going to actually go with Zach Frazier, though. I like the interior offensive line for Arizona. You did bring in Paris Johnson last year to play tackle. I think Zach Frazier here give you a little more power on the inside end. The Arizona Cardinals complete an incredible draft fit for this 2-round mock draft. Dunze, Quinyon Mitchell, Chop Robinson, and now Zach Frazier, an incredible haul for the Arizona Cardinals, reloading that team quick, fast, and in a hurry. Washington, however, they are not going to pass on Jordan Morgan. They need to protect J.J. McCarthy because that offensive line got Sam Howell destroyed last year. And this is a pro offensive line podcast. We will continue, and this is a very good offensive line draft. Jordan Morgan, you are heading to Washington. The Chargers, they need offensive line help too. However, I think that with those guys gone, they're going to look at the board here. I don't think Kingsley is quite the right pick here, but I do like Ennis Rackstraw Jr., who really is a first-round pick caliber player. They need corners in Los Angeles as well. They don't have – like Asante Samuel Jr. is nice. Derwin James is nice at safety, but they need another corner there. They were getting toasted in the back end down the stretch, so I like Ennis Rackstraw Jr. Tennessee here at pick number 38. Kind of want to give him one of these receivers. I think that would make a lot of sense. But I do also look at it, and I think they could use some help on the edges. Darius Robinson makes a lot of sense here. Brandon Fisk is a very, very good player. We're going to go ahead and go with, this is tough because you already have DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley. You could get a little bit younger at receiver, and one thing you don't have is a whole lot of speed with those guys. So we're actually going to take a fun trip, and we're going to go with Troy Franklin, the absolute burner. Give Will Levis somebody to just let it fly to. We know Will Levis can sling it. Let's go ahead and give him Troy Franklin, which is now going to take us to Carolina at pick number 39. Again, part of the Brian Burns trade to the Giants. I kind of want to give them another receiver. I'm not going to lie. I think giving him Keon Coleman would be fun. Giving them an offensive tackle would be fun. But I do like that the player they are highlighting it in Darius Robinson, the edge out of Missouri. You got to fill that Brian Burns role. Defensively, you have Derek Brown, who's really good, and you have Shaq Thompson, I believe, who's really good. But there's a lot of holes defensively, and Darius Robinson just makes sense. Somebody you can get after the passer here. Washington, you have the exact same need as you need somebody who can get after the passer. I think edge is what they would prefer. Looking at the edge, I do like both of these, but neither one's really, I don't know. There's not a whole lot for edge there that's outstanding necessarily. We could look at corners. Ooh, I do like the corners here too. It's tough with Washington because they have some good players, but they have a lot of needs at the same time. So we're going to just keep it safe and go with Chris Braswell. You traded both your edges last year. I think Robinson would have made a lot of sense here, but with the way the board's playing, we're going to give them Chris Braswell. Green Bay here at pick number 41. Offensive line is a big need for him. I think this is where they will start to look for offensive line too. So we're going to give them Patrick Paul for the one from Houston. I like Kingsley. You know what? I changed my mind. I talked myself out of it. Kingsley's going to go to Green Bay. I think Patrick's going to go here in a couple of picks. Houston, this is where we're going to have a little bit of fun. You have the two stud edge rushers. You have the extra pick now because of the trade with the Vikings. Receivers, you have Nico Collins and Tank Dell. I think a receiver like Keon Coleman is very much in play. I think with D'Amico Ryans leading the way, he knows he has a C.J. Stroud. They have a good young offensive line. I like Tavondre Sweat, the big just refrigerator in the middle of the defense. You have those two studs with Hunter and Anderson on the outside. Put in Tavondre Sweat because you got to deal with Tony Pollard with the Titans, Travis Etienne with the Jaguars, Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson with the Colts. Just bringing somebody to plug the middle. Tavondre Sweat makes a ton of sense here for for Houston. Speaking of, though, now we have Atlanta next, and I know they would really like the idea of taking a receiver here, but I think I like the idea of them going with corner. I like TJ Tampa a lot there. You have AJ Terrell, you have Jesse Bates in the secondary. Offensively, you have so many pieces. I don't think they need to add more. I think they're going to try and fortify that defense. So I'm going to go with TJ Tampa, the corner out of Iowa State. Maybe a little bit of a reach, but he's a very good player. Next, we have the Las Vegas Raiders at pick number 44, and it wants me to take Bo Nix right here, and I kind of do as well, but I don't think that's tough because I don't think that's necessarily an Antonio Pierce type of guy. He already has Zane O'Connell, who I think he's going to look at in a similar vein. So we're going to go ahead and go to offensive line, and I think this is where we will see Patrick Paul go. I think they will do we want to go Patrick Paul or do it? Yeah, we're going to go with Patrick Paul. Get an offensive tackle opposite of Colton Miller. I it just makes a lot of sense here. Defensively, you're looking really good. There are some good players like Brandon Fisk makes a lot of sense. Chris Jenkins. They have some really good defensive players left. But I think they're going to go with the offensive tackle route. Just keep Aiden O'Connell upright, see if they can run the ball. Will Patrick Paul there. Now we have the New Orleans Saints here at pick number 45. Bo Nix would make a lot of sense here as well. But I think him being not necessarily someone you could sit behind Derek Carr for a while. So we're going to go ahead and go down, and I like Brandon Fisk here, actually. So you know what? They're highlighting very similar players to what I'm looking at. So Brandon Fisk makes a lot of sense. Versatile defensive lineman, move him up and down. Could replace Cameron Jordan, in a couple of years, or give you somebody to play next to him as well. Indianapolis at pick 49, you brought in Brock Bowers. You need corners, but when I look at corners, there's not really anyone you take right here. Max Melton makes a lot of sense, but he's their type of corner, but I think it's a little early for him. Who I do like Xavier Legette hanging out here. Very comparable to a DK Metcalf, AJ Brown type of build as far as like height, weight, speed, menacing. Colts need a true X receiver. You have the slot with Josh Downs at the Z with Michael Pittman. You brought in Brock Bowers as a tight end. You have the rookie quarterback. You might as well go all in. Xavier Legette could fill some of that role that Alec Pierce has yet to fully thrive in. And if nothing else, it gives you depth at the receiver position to help your quarterback out. So we're going to go with Xavier Legette to the Colts. And at last, after a long wait, Bo Nix is going to go off the board. I think the Giants, seeing him here, they're going to go ahead and pull the trigger and say, you know what, we'll bring in Bo Nix. Second round. They clearly don't love Daniel Jones. I think they brought in Drew Lock to beat him out. And I think Bo Nix here in the second round is someone, if depending on how injury goes, it's somebody they could bring in. If he's good, he goes right away. If not, we'll see what the plan is. It all depends on what they think of Daniel Jones. We're going to put Bo Nix to the Giants. Next, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think receiver is very much in play. Keon Coleman is a great fit here, but I like Ricky Pearsall. I also, you know what? I'm going to call a random audible here. I'm going to go with Malachi Corley, the king of yards after catching this. You have Christian Kirk, the slot receiver who gets downfield. You have Zay Jones, underrated pass catcher. How about Malachi Corley, someone that they can just flick the ball to in the flat and watch him just run through people? He's menacing. He's a running back with the ball in his hand. So we're going to go Malachi Corley, what seems like a little bit of a reach, but a very good fit. Just someone Trevor Lawrence could flick the ball out to in space and watch him cook. Next, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, pick number 49. Went offensive line early. I think receiver, once again, very much in play. But I'm also going to go defensively. We're going to go to safeties, which I think safety is a bit of a need for them. Maybe not necessarily here. Corner, they could use some corner help as well. They have an underrated amount of needs. We're going to actually go with Chris Jenkins. I like the big defensive lineman out of Michigan, someone to also plug the middle in that division with Lamar and now Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, Nick Chubb, if he's able to come back healthy, Jerome Ford. Chris Jenkins just makes a lot of sense to plug up space in the middle. This draft, I think they're going to focus on the trenches, and we'll see what happens with T. Higgins. That could change things, but for now, we're going to go with the big boys. We have Philadelphia Eagles. Receivers very much on the board. You brought in Devin White. You had Nakobe Dean coming back. Linebackers a little bit less of a urgent need. So I'm going to say they look at somebody like Keon Coleman they could throw jump balls to. That's a very interesting fit, I will say. It says they want to take a receiver here. I'm not really feeling receiver with this particular pick. I think maybe in a few ones they could, but we're going to this is a very interesting one. I'm actually going to go with Connor Beebe. We're going to build the interior of that offensive line here. Jason Kelce retiring. We know how much Howie in the squad loves to build the offensive line. So we're going to go with Connor Beebe here at pick 50. Pick number 51, Pittsburgh Steelers. They do need a receiver. They do have the big-bodied receiver in George Pickens. So I do like the idea of Roman Wilson here, but I also really, really like Tez Walker. Russell Wilson loves that deep ball. He loves to just rainbow it, and Tez Walker can absolutely fly. So we're going to go with Tez Walker to the Steelers. And they do have a knack for picking interesting second, third, fourth round pick receivers that end up panning out. I think he'll be the next one. The Rams, we're going to have a little bit of fun here. They're going to stick with Texas, and they're going to go to Tre'Davion Sanders. Tyler Higbee is injured. If I'm not mistaken, he'll be out to start the year. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, very versatile players. And I think Tre'Davion Sanders can be a very versatile, athletic tight end too. I know he didn't have the best combine numbers or pro day necessarily, but he's a very good athlete, a very good, versatile football player that Sean McVay will just have too much fun with. That's a little bit of it. That's a toy for Sean McVay's pick. I'm going to have fun with this type of pick. Now we have the Philadelphia Eagles here at pick 53. I'm going to go ahead and give them Edge Cooper with this pick is what I'm thinking. I don't think it's as big of a need, but I think his versatility defensively I think this is going to be a very defensive and offensive line heavy draft for the Eagles. They're going to load up on the things that made them good for the last year and a half until they kind of fell apart down the stretch last year. And the Cleveland Browns, their first pick of the draft, Keon Coleman is right there, but I'm going to go ahead and go with Peyton Wilson, the linebacker. They need some help in the front seven on defense, just especially a linebacker. Peyton Wilson makes a ton of sense out of NC State. We have the Miami Dolphins up next. These receiver picks are very interesting. I'm gonna stick with the defensive side of the ball though. Javon Holland and Tyler Nubin would be a very nasty safety combination. I think corner is still a bit of a need when we look at corners though. Are those necessarily guys that they would take? I'm not sure. I do like the idea of Mike Sainstrill to go in the nickel with them, but I think he might just maybe not quite yet. So Junior Colson's a fun pick, though. They did lose Jerome Baker, so I do like the suggestion here of Jerome Colson, the Michigan man, going to the Miami Dolphins. So I do like that one to give them a middle linebacker of the defense. Dallas Cowboys, I think this is where you see Keon Coleman go off the board. They need a big-bodied receiver. You have CeeDee Lamb, the athletic Z, slash out of the slot dynamic. This gives Dak someone to throw a fade 50-50 ball to. Kind of what they hoped Michael Gallup would be, but he struggled coming back from that injury a couple years ago. And Brandon Cooks is clearly a burner. This is basically someone to throw alley-oops to. So we'll go Keon Coleman to the Cowboys. Now we have Tampa Bay. I like Ricky Pearsall a lot here. I don't know why. I know it says Mike Saintrill's a good pick, and I just kind of made the case. But I like Ricky Pearsall. He had the catch of the year. I think him and Chris Godwin could kind of play in a similar role. So I like Ricky Pearsall. He complements Mike Evans very nicely. Green Bay, I want to give them a receiver here so bad. They really should give receivers. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to give them a receiver. We're going to go ahead and give them Roman Wilson. I think Harbaugh's going to be annoyed. I think this is who he wanted to slip. But I think Roman Wilson will go here, a versatile receiver. Just someone to go with Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs. I think they like all of those guys, but you can never have too many weapons. So we're going to go ahead and go with Rome Wilson to Green Bay. Houston now at pick number 59. I think they went defensively earlier. I think they will look offensively at this point. Running back, I think, is very much on the board for them as well. They did bring in Joe Mixon, but at the same time, I kind of want to give them Trey Benson. I think I'm going to. I think just giving CJ Stroud more weapons offensively, I think Trey Benson makes a lot of sense here. Now we got Buffalo at pick number 60. Somehow Tyler Nubin is still there. I probably should have drafted him like 5 times over. I know some of these picks I just couldn't quite get myself to pull the trigger on. I think Tyler Nubin will make sense here to kind of fill in the roles of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. So the Bills luck out there. Detroit here at pick number 61. I'm going to go with Michael Hall Jr., the interior defensive lineman out of Ohio State. Very, very good, disruptive. He had an incredible Senior Bowl week. He probably should be gone by now, too. This is probably the most interesting mock draft in the second round that I've had, but we're going to go Michael Hall Jr. out of Ohio State to Detroit, who continues to fortify that defense. Baltimore, I like Mike Sainstrill. They need secondary help a lot. He's versatile, can play the nickel. He can tackle. They could use him similar to how they use Kyle Hamilton, just all over the place. So Mike Sainstrill makes a lot of sense. 63, we got the 49ers. They could continue to go offensive line. It looks like the suggestions were on the same track of mind as me. I like Jalen Polk. He gives them another receiving weapon, especially Brandon Ayuk. Is he still going to be there? Is he going to end up being traded? I don't know what's going to go on there. So we're going to go Jalen Polk to the 49ers. And rounding out this mock draft, we have Kansas City on the board yet again. Defensively, they are very, very well loaded, but they could use another corner. And I think Max Melton is going to be the pick here. Another second-round pick, a mid-round pick they could use. Fill in the L'Jarius Sneed role opposite Trent McDuffie, just continuing to fill the hole. So we're going to go with Max Melton to the Kansas City Chiefs to round out this 2-round mock draft that featured 4 quarterbacks in the first 4 picks. So let us know down below what picks you liked, what picks you don't like, what picks you would change, and which ones you think are spot on the money. Once again, be sure to keep it here every Monday leading up to the draft for Mock Draft Mondays. Check out on Tuesdays with Kelsey, Tier Tuesdays, tiering the prospects by their position groups. And, of course, our live show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, or your favorite places to listen to podcasts, whether it be Spotify, Apple, so on and so forth. We appreciate y'all for joining us, and we will see you all again next time.